In this video, I'll explain why, how, and when you would need to service the brine valve assembly from your WaterBoss or Aquamaster water softener, and when to bite the bullet and just replace it with a new one. Hi, I'm Gary the Water Guy, and I simplify water filtration to help you conquer crappy water for your family. Now, if your WaterBoss or Aquamaster water softener has stopped softening your water, or suddenly there's too much water in the brine tank, or you're getting salty water after regeneration, it could very well be because the brine line or brine line flow control has become clogged or compromised. And by the way, if the brine valve is leaking water back into the brine tank or the piston does not move smoothly, it's time to replace it. Also, just so you know, the replacement parts have changed, so be sure to watch this video right to the end to see how to use the new parts with your older water softener. And by the way, if you're wondering what the difference is between an Aquamaster water softener and a WaterBoss water softener, they're exactly the same. Aquamaster is the name that they're sold under in Canada, WaterBoss is the name that they're sold under in the US, and here we're talking about maintenance on the Aquamaster or WaterBoss AMS 700, 900 or 950. All right, start by removing the valve cover. So all you do is put your fingers in at the back where the pipes come in and out of the water softener and just lift the top right off. We'll set that aside. Then what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to start a regeneration. So push the regeneration button, hold it down for 5 seconds, and you'll hear the motor start working, and you'll hear that start into the regeneration cycle. Now wait till the cycle actually starts, because it'll say going to 1, and once it gets to 1 is when the cycle actually starts. So just wait for it. Okay, now you'll hear a sudden rush of water as the backwash starts. When it starts backwashing, then over here you can take the bypass valve and turn it from the arrow being in service, turn it over to bypass. Then you're going to unplug the controller and unclip it. So there's 2 clips on each end at the back. So what you do is just slide it to the right and you can take that off. So now what we want to do, this is where we want to get into it here. We need to get a screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver. So there's 2 screws, one at the top, one at the bottom. And just be careful, these screws do not fall inside your brine tank. And then the hex nut here, you can use a pair of pliers, something like this, to undo that. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, so it'll be this way. Undo that. All right, then you remove it, and we're removing the brine valve. Be careful that there's a plunger inside here, and there's an O-ring inside here. So again, make sure they don't fall into the brine tank. So for now, you can just remove them and set them aside. Then there's 2 screws here you're gonna have to open up to get inside the brine valve assembly itself. Then you need to remove the brine line flow control, which is inside here. So with a wooden toothpick, the kind that's pointy at both ends, carefully push inside there and pull it out. So this is a key maintenance part right here, is that you need to make sure that the hole in here is not clogged. And you do that with the toothpick. Now you don't want to enlarge that hole, that's why you don't want to use a paper clip or something metal. Make sure that this piston here is freed up and it moves freely, because if this does not move freely, then you need to replace the whole brine piston. So once you've checked both of those and this has been cleaned up, then you can put it back in. Now be careful, the brine line flow control has 2 sides to it, a flat side and a concave side, or in other words, a side that's kind of scooped out. So make sure the side that's scooped out is the one that faces up when you put it back in here, and make sure you put it into the right side, this side here. Slide that back in there, push that down, and just make sure that it's seated in place. And before you reassemble it, make sure you put some plumber's clear silicone grease on the O-ring. It's back here. And that'll also help hold the O-ring in place while you're reassembling it. And then you can go back to the reassembly. You can put the 2 halves back together and tighten them back up. And then the piston assembly goes back into place. And then you can reattach it. Now before you reattach this side, you want to make sure that you slide this end of it back into the top of the float assembly. And you can start tightening that a little bit at this point, just to kind of hold it in place. Slide this back down and put your screws in. And then tighten the connection here. Now this just has to be slightly more than hand tight. Now if you do need to replace the old brine valve assembly, you'll quickly see that the new ones that are now available are different. This part here is quite a bit different, but I'll show you how to install the new ones. So first you need to make sure that the O-ring is in place and they've greased it with silicone grease, and that the piston itself is in. Feed a screw in here, and then we'll start it in the same position as the old one came out of. And then the one on the bottom. Now this red clip, you need to remove that. Now you'll see the new fitting comes with this tubing, and you see these gray lines. So these gray lines need to actually disappear. That tells you that it's the tubing is shoved in far enough. So you notice when you start to push it in, it seems to stop, but you need to keep going so that gray line disappears. And then again, grab that red clip, pull it back slightly to open up the gap so that you can install that red clip. Now, from the old brine assembly here, you need to remove these parts here. So just be careful how they're orientated and what order they're in. The black one goes first, then the white one, and then the hex nut. So we'll put the hex nut on here first, then the white one goes. So the white one, you'll see it's beveled. So the smaller end of the bevel goes in toward the hex nut. And then the black fitting looks a little bit like a top hat. One end is quite a bit bigger than the other end. So the smaller end goes in, like that. All right. Now you curve it and slide it in, and then we tighten this up. So this does need to be a little bit more than hand tight, just to make sure it doesn't leak. So we'll just double check these screws to make sure they're all the way tight. And they are. So now what you can do is put the controller back on. Now just be careful of the 4 clips here. Put your position in place and then snap it into place. That's very important. And then you can apply power. Now what you'll notice, it'll say on here going home. So it needs to find the home position before it can do anything else. Once it finds the home position, it's automatically going to go into a regeneration cycle. So just wait for it. So now you can move the bypass valve from the bypass position with the arrow pointing toward the left, move it back over, and you'll hear water start gushing through the system. As it pressurizes the system, now's the time to check for leaks. Now the water softener is back into its home position, and now it's started the regeneration cycle. So again, let it go through its whole regeneration cycle, but keep an eye on it in case you have a leak so that you can fix it right away. If you do notice a leak, put it back into bypass, fix the leak, put it back into service, and go on from there. And if you need a new brine valve assembly for your WaterBoss or Aquamaster water softener, you can go to our websites, either waterestore.com in the US or waterestore.ca in Canada, but for free shipping and discount pricing. And once the water softener has gone into its regen cycle, then let it go through its complete cycle, but keep an eye on it just to make sure you don't have any leaks. Click here for your next video on water softener troubleshooting, and I'll see you there. Any questions or comments? Add them down below.